This is Strange New Trek, a podcast about the life and times of Captain Christopher Pike. And now your hosts. Happy 2023, everybody. We all hope you had a great holiday season. And this time of year, many of us find ourselves at parties with coworkers, having conversations we wouldn't normally have. And here aboard our starship, things are no different. Occasionally, you find yourself in a conversation that you were not prepared for. Like when your new transporter chief says something like, he never understood the appeal of Star Trek. Now, once we were all done hitting him with our Lirpas, we realized that this could actually be used as a teaching moment. So we invited our new Chief Walford to watch one of the best, if not the absolute best, episodes of the original Star Trek, The Balance of Terror. I am your host, Jeremy Vilmur. Joining me now is my number one dog, Commander Dog, our Chief Engineer, Chris Noonien-Singh, and our new Transporter Chief, Eric Walford. What's happening, guys?
What's up?
Hi.
Okay. Eric, so this is, how many episodes of Star Trek have you seen, or how many have you actually paid attention to?
One.
Is it this one?
This one.
Okay.
First episode ever.
That is good to know, because then we're going into this with a clean slate.
Oh, yeah. No bad habits from Reddit or anything like that.
Yeah, none of that's being involved here. Now, Balance of Terror is, I would say, in my top 2 or 3 episodes of Star Trek, it's probably my number one, except for a couple of caveats like Khan or the Mirror Universe thing. Chris, where does Balance of Terror sit in your scaling of Star Trek episodes?
It's not number one, but it's definitely top 5, easy. We've kind of danced around this episode a bit on the show. So, yeah, I mean, I like the submarine fight-esque stuff they do in here. I like that a lot.
Okay. Eric, any first impressions before we start getting into a breakdown of the actual episode itself?
You know, I mean, when I first came on, what was this, filmed in 1966?
Yes.
The graphics were awesome for the time.
Now, I'm wondering, now they did a reboot of all the graphics back in 2007, 2008. I'm wondering if maybe that's what you saw.
Possibly. I don't know. I downloaded from Amazon.
Yeah, it could have been that. But yeah, they did like a refresh of all the special effects, and it looks fantastic. The show was originally filmed in 35 millimeter. So the stuff that was filmed itself actually looks really good when it's cleaned up and rescreened.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to jump into the cold open of this episode, where Captain Kirk is performing a wedding for Angelina Martine and Robert Tomlinson when a red alert goes off and calls everybody to their battle stations. Outpost 4 is under attack. Eric, since you had never seen anything, did you know who any of the characters were at first glance, or is this completely cold to you?
Well, I'm a huge horror fan, so of course I know Captain Kirk.
Okay.
How would you might know that face from horror? What are you talking about, Eric?
I just see him, and it's like Mariah Carey's face.
Oh, okay.
I knew who Spock was and Scotty, and that's about the extent of the characters that I know.
No, that's fair, because, I mean, there's a good amount of just, what would you call that, pop culture bleed through just from the collective conscious to the individual level.
Yeah.
So I'd say if you have that many characters, you're probably off to a relatively okay understanding of what you're seeing. We get into Act 1, which I am titling Their War, Not Yours. The USS Enterprise investigates a situation in the Romulan neutral zone where an unknown assailant is methodically destroying each of the Earth's outposts bordering the zone. The crew is forbidden by Starfleet Command's orders to violate the neutral zone. Resident racist and curmudgeon Lieutenant Stiles is sure that it's the Romulans, a faction that the Federation fought a war with about 100 years ago, where he lost many family members. Kirk has to remind him that it was their war and not his. Outposts 2 and 3 have been destroyed, and Kirk contacts Outpost 4 Commander Hansen, who relays details of the attacks, the energy weapon that's being used by a ship, and then Outpost 4 is fired on and goes out in a ball of white fury on their screen. Spock detects a moving object, but nothing visible on the screen. And Kirk orders a parallel course instead of an intercept course, believing that the alien ship may not be aware of them since they can't see it. Styles, of course, objects because he feels like the ship is a democracy. And then he raises the fact that there could be spies on board, which Sulu agrees with. Now, I found it interesting that the Japanese character, portrayed by a Japanese actor who had been interned in the World War II internment camps here in the States, they gave the backup role to that kind of racist move. Did anybody pick up on that, or was that just me?
No, I mean, with that guy, it's all throughout this episode, and at least once or twice, Kirk has to remind him, "Hey, man, you need to calm it down. There's no place for that kind of bigotry on my ship or whatever."
Yeah,
it seems like he's kind of like still harping on a war that happened 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
doesn't that sound familiar a little bit?
It did a little bit, absolutely, absolutely. Lieutenant Commander Uhura picks up a communication signal through which Spock is able to obtain a view of the Romulan ship's interior, providing the Federation with its first visual of Romulans ever. I thought this was kind of interesting, too. The Federation and Romulans fought a war where they never saw each other face to face, and that was 100 years in the past.
I don't think that's anything out of the ordinary because, I mean, if you're just fighting in space, then you're not going to get too much of an opportunity, especially when you're talking about probably the technologies are a little incompatible maybe, so you're not getting view screen stuff. I don't know. That's just where my head was at when I was watching all that.
But they even did a peace treaty without ever seeing each other.
Wow, yeah, that makes it weird. Well, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I mean, maybe they were talking about, nobody alive today has seen.
No. They mean that no human had ever seen a Romulan, and no Romulan had ever met a human, because they come back to that point throughout Star Trek's 500-year history.
Well, I wonder if they had the Vulcans helping them out with that treaty. I don't know.
No, that's what I don't understand. So the whole time all of this is going on. Now, I thought Spock, through pop culture, was a Vulcan.
Yes.
But as soon as they get a view inside of the Romulan ship, they show another Vulcan.
No, they show a Romulan, which is a bunch of Vulcans who were warlike, who split off thousands of years ago and founded their own society.
So, Spock is not a Romulan.
He is not a Romulan. He is a Vulcan.
Yeah, after the original series, they kind of make a more of a visual differentiation between the two, I feel like.
Yeah, but Eric, you want to know kind of a fun fact? The actor who plays the Romulan captain comes back later and plays Spock's father. So you want to see some confusing on-screen information? There you go. But that's the idea, is that the Romulans are what would you call that? Spock even says a phrase for it. I can't remember, but it's an offshoot race of Vulcans. Because in the past, the Vulcans were very warlike and brutal people, and then they adapted the ways of logic, and that kind of put an end to that. Act 2, which I am calling, I wish Star Trek wasn't so woke like it was back in the good old days. As Uhura attempts to interpret Romulan signals, Styles sarcastically suggests that they give the job to Spock. And Kirk's like, come again, Lieutenant? Are you just saying that because Spock is a genius, or are you getting at something else? But on the bridge of the Romulan ship, the commander has noticed the Enterprise following them. He confers with one of the officers, the Centurion, on the ethics of their mission. We get the sense here that the older guys on the ship are kind of sick of this stuff. And then a younger man named Decius has been communicating with Romulan homeworld in violation of the orders for radio silence, to which the Romulan commander demotes him. And the Centurion has to remind him that Decius has powerful friends back home.
Yeah, demotes him on the spot and then sends him back to his post.
Why don't you go stand in the corner, kid? The commander quietly expresses distaste for his mission, but assures the Centurion of his devotion to his duty. In the Enterprise briefing room, the officers discuss their chances against a Romulan ship. Spock demonstrates the effect of the Romulan weapon on Outpost 4's protective shielding. He does this by basically picking up a hunk of shielding and crumbling it like it's chalk.
Yeah.
Mr. Scott reports that the Romulan ship power is simple impulse, which I don't believe at this point they really had the terminology worked out yet, because a ship under impulse power, as we understand it, wouldn't have been able to make it from the Romulan homeworld to this part of the neutral zone.
Yeah, those are sublight speeds, and it's going to take you forever, possibly multiple generations to get to where they were with just impulse power. Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe that's just an artifact of them not quite having things worked out yet as to what means what. I have seen where people have, like these Star Trek big brains have decided that simple impulse wasn't the speed they were propelled at, but rather the way they were generating energy. It's a much longer thing that I can get into or care to really read, because to me, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I just need the basics. Like, for me, as long as if you're saying impulse power is sublight and warp speed is obviously warp speed, then we're good here. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, that's as far as I need to take it. Styles urges an attack on the Romulan ship, arguing from history that running away would guarantee a war. Chris, you and I have seen a little bit what could have happened there, and we know for a fact that is the case.
Yeah, I actually struggled with whether or not Eric should have also watched the Strange New Worlds version of this episode. It might have caused a little bit of confusion.
I think, yeah, until you really know this one,
So there's another series that did the same episode.
But it was on purpose and for a good story reason, I feel like.
Yeah, Eric put it this: they do a parallel reality where a different captain goes through this situation.
Yep,
I would say it's just as good, if not equally as good, as this particular episode already is.
Yeah, agreed.
But is the other captain as calm, cool, and collected as Kirk was in the episode?
More so, I would say.
Yeah, it's just that they have two very different command styles. You'd have to watch some Strange New Worlds for some of that stuff to make sense, which is why I didn't really push you to watch it, even though I mentioned it in our show chat here.
Yeah. Now, surprisingly, Spock agrees with Styles and says that if these guys are an offshoot of his Vulcan blood, which he believes to be the case, they can't just let them go hanging out in space. They need to attack right away.
Which is an odd thing for Spock to say.
Yes, that he's not always like go out with the gun shooting kind of guy,
Yep.
I didn't quite understand. Was it really the Romulans who attacked Outpost 4?
Yes, it was.
So it was that ship.
It was that ship. They had been, so they don't put it in this episode, and it's not really germane, I don't think, either way, but originally this was supposed to have been a starship plan that the Romulans stole from the Federation and then hooked up their plasma weapons and cloaking devices to. That's why it looks a little bit like a Federation ship. What they were supposed to be doing with this ship was flying out invisibly and then testing the defenses of these outpost stations. That was their command from the Romulan High Command or the Romulan Emperor or whoever it is.
So did the Romulan commander of the ship just... Because it seemed like he didn't want to fight. It seemed like that he was going against what the Romulans were saying. And did he do that from the get-go? That's why I even questioned if they attacked Outpost 4.
Oh, yes, they did. He did not want to be doing what he was doing, but he was doing it because he was ordered to. Pretty clearly with him, I would say, try to get across the fact that he's tired of war.
Mm-hmm.
They've been at war for 100 years. And he just doesn't see why. He even brings up, was it like another dead ship for the glory of the Empire or something? And you can just tell that he's like jaded and he's old and he's kind of past it all. But like he even says to the Centurion, he's like, yeah, it's not something I want to do, but I will follow my duty.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, until it comes to, he's kind of wrestling with similar things that Kirk's wrestling with. Like, if I do A, then that'll cause a war. If I do B, then, we'll probably get shot out of the sky.
Yep.
It kind of seems like a chess match between two equals.
Yep.
Yes. Very much so. And I believe one of the head writers on this episode, what he wanted was a captain who was like Kirk in almost every way. He was going to be as honorable. but as duty driven. He wanted him to be just an equal almost every step. And he also wanted this to seem like a Rome in space was the other thing he was going for.
Yeah.
So Kirk goes ahead and gives the order. They're going into red alert and they're going to attack. Act 3. He's a sorcerer, that one. He reads the thoughts in my brain. To Eric's absolute point right there, that they're just like an evenly matched chess opponents, They're following the Romulan ship's path towards the comet's tail. Kirk orders the Enterprise to jump forward and attack the Romulan ship when its trail becomes visible. The Romulan commander hopes to double back and intercept the Enterprise, but on learning that his target is no longer following, he orders evasive maneuvers. Each commander has now failed in their plans, and they reflect on the other's intelligence. A barrage of phaser fire damages the Romulan ship. The Centurion pushes the Romulan commander out of the way of falling debris, but is fatally injured. Now, I don't know about you guys. I found it odd that starships are made out of rocks, because that sure looked like a bunch of rocks falling out of the ceiling.
It did.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just thought that was kind of weird.
That's some set reusing from something else, I bet.
Yeah.
Let's get some debris from the Rome set over here.
Just drop it on everybody.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the phaser circuits on the Enterprise burn out as the Romulan ship fires its primary weapon, which is a large plasma cannon. Kirk orders them to turn away and basically run from this blast, which is how they discover that while it's super destructive at a short range, it does dissipate as it goes on. Mm-hmm.
Which is super weird for something in space to do.
Yeah, I don't know if plasma would actually do that, but I guess it cools off.
I mean, to be fair, I'm not an astrophysicist, or am I knowledgeable enough in that area to even say it, but just from my own, I don't know, my own basic knowledge about how space works, I feel like that wouldn't happen.
Right. Well, no, it's because I'm thinking a laser wouldn't, or I mean, it would, but it'd have to get a galaxy away before it got so broad that it had no fluff behind it.
If it didn't, if no gravity acted on it, it would stay like it was shot.
Oh yeah. Well, lasers actually, they would expand eventually because it is light. If it's a solid shell, you're right. As soon as it's in motion.
Well, hang on though. The whole reason that lasers do that is because there's an atmosphere that it's getting thrown into. But if it was thrown in a vacuum, I don't think it would do that.
Well, yeah, but you got to remember how much dust and stuff there is in space. Eventually,
I guess you're right. Space is not technically empty.
Yeah,
you're right. I guess,
but you fire an actual slug of some kind through space. It's going to go on forever till it hits something or until it gets captured in the gravity well of something.
I always wonder that about Battlestar.
Yeah, there's a game I like called Stellaris where you can just be cruising around exploring, and one of your ships can be taken out by something that was fired in a different galaxy 10 billion years ago. It just zooms in and hits your ship.
So I have less of a problem with plasma reaching the Enterprise, a plasma laser or what it is, but they start talking about nukes in space, and that's not going to do anything either.
Oh, because they're talking about get the old school nukes out.
Yep.
But then again, Eric, there's nothing saying that the Romulan nuclear weapons work the same way that ours do now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I mean, aside from the terminology of the whole thing, I was fine with that. I didn't feel like, I feel like they could have made up another word instead of basically saying, "Oh, let's go get these old ass nukes."
Yeah. Well, it's, I think that's just done to scare people. It was the 60s right after the Bay of Pigs and all, the Cuban Missile Crisis.
That is a fair point.
Yeah, I think that's the only reason that they drop nukes in there. I mean, and definitely back then there were still plans for powering spaceships with nuclear bombs and, if they could be used in space or not. The 60s was a weird time. They were planning on hey, maybe we could take submarines and put a baffle plate at the back of them and just drop a bomb out there and 6, 7, 8 bombs. Next thing you know, you're doing half a light speed. Wild ideas at the time.
That'd be interesting seeing a submarine fly through space.
Yeah. Well, and it wouldn't work because, they have to use the ocean as a heat sink. It was just like, these wide, like, hey, what could we do to, like, have some kind of deep space presence,
See, this is why the Earth needs a space shipyard, man, to build that stuff in space.
Yep. That's pretty much it. So they discover the range limit on the Romulan weapon. Now they're determined to prevent the Romulan ship from re-entering the neutral zone. Now, Eric, I don't know if you caught this, but basically it's illegal for either party to go into the neutral zone. So, I mean, the Romulans are in violation of it, but the Enterprise has been ordered to not violate going into the neutral zone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, about that.
Okay. Unable to stop the Romulan ship and aware of the consequences, Kirk orders the Enterprise into the neutral zone.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Korean DMZ, I feel like.
Yeah, that's basically the idea behind it.
Yeah.
Displaying the restrained emotion as his friend dies, the Romulan commander orders all debris and the body of the Centurion to be loaded into an escape chute as decoy.
Yeah, to hell with that Centurion.
Yep. I thought, look, I mean, you're looking at that thing, man, this is my friend's body, but you know what? If they start picking up, there's bodies floating around in space, they're going to think we're dead.
Well, what's that? We talked about this during Strange New Worlds, but there was that one submarine movie where they loaded up a bunch of debris in the torpedo tube and shot it out to make the surface craft think it was dead.
Yes.
So I guess they're doing a similar thing here. That's what I took from it.
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely what they're doing. They're dumping debris in a dead body to make it look like, yep, you got us.
All one crew member.
Yep. Well, I mean, how much you hit a starship hard enough? How much of what's going to be left? You know, I don't know.
You're right.
Yeah, I mean, you throw a beer can at something at 2/3 of light speed, and, you know. The Enterprise picks up the debris on sensors, but in doing so loses track of the Romulan ship. Act 4. I regret that we meet this way. You and I are of a kind. It has come down to a waiting game. Both ships powered down in the neutral zone to prevent detection. After the Enterprise has been powered down for 9 hours and 47 minutes, Kirk tries to rest in his quarters when his human Rand walks in and asks if the captain would like something to eat. Yes, Janice, I would like something to eat. Dr. McCoy arrives as Rand leaves. McCoy gives him kind of a weird, like, mathematical speech. In this galaxy, there's a mathematical probability of 3 million Earth-type planets, blah, 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 blah. And he comes down to the point that on each of those, you know, in each of that situation, there's only one of us. Don't destroy the one named Kirk. Because you can see that Kirk is just driving himself batty, trying to figure out what to do here. Almost to a Captain Ahab level.
Yeah, it's not quite that bad, but yeah.
But I said almost. You know, I put a qualifier in there.
No, that wasn't a judgment on you saying that. I was just saying, like, yeah, I could definitely see what you're saying. It's not quite to obsession. It's not quite obsession yet, but I guess McCoy sees something.
Yep. You know what I find interesting about Star Trek is how often the obsession with, because, you know, it's almost the case here, but not quite. And then there's the episode with the, what were those things? The Doomsday Machines and Commodore Decker and his obsession with destroying it. And then later with Khan and his obsession with destroying the Enterprise. And then Picard and his obsession with destroying the Borg. How often that little hook can be used for a story element.
Well, I mean, I think Picard had a reason to want to do that. They assimilated him.
Mm-hmm. Of course, it's the first time he ever reacted like that, and we don't need to get into the next gen movies just yet, probably. But all right, so later on, Spock is making repairs on the bridge and accidentally activates a panel. And the Romulan ship detects the Enterprise and moves into attack.
I feel like they could have made somebody else do that. That doesn't seem like something Spock would do.
No, but everybody can make a mistake, and this also ratchets up the racist fears and tension, you know. From a preserving the character standpoint, I certainly see where you're coming from, but from a ratcheting up the drama, I get why they did it. Kirk anticipates this and manages to fire on the Romulan ship. Furious, the Romulan commander orders more debris into the disposal tubes, including a nuclear warhead. Spock detects, here's Eric's thing. Spock detects the metal cased object and triggers a nuclear explosion. The Romulan captain uses this as a way to beat a hasty retreat for home. Scott reports that while the phasers are operational, only Tomlinson, the groom from the wedding, is manning the station. Stiles, surprisingly, has a skill besides just being a racist, and says, hey, I was a weapons officer on my previous ship. How about I go give him a hand? And Kirk's like, yeah, just take that pointy hood off before they go, please. So Kirk decides now they're going to play dead and try to lure the Romulan ship back to them. Despite his reservations and the crippled status of his own ship, the Romulan commander is reminded by Decius that it's his duty to crush the enemy, and the commander then reluctantly gives the order to attack. Spock is checking on the phaser crew when Silas coldly remarks that, hey, we'll handle things here without your help, Vulcan. This is Spock's like, all right, dude. So he's going to take off, but the next thing you know, there's a coolant leak that erupts in the phaser room. I think this is the only time they ever put the phaser controls in a separate room. I'm not sure 100%, but it sure seems like it to me, just off the top of my head.
What do you mean, like off of the bridge?
Off of the bridge, yeah. I think this is the first time we ever see them actually handled from like an actual room. That's just all we do in this room is handle the weapons. You know,
I mean, I could see on a starship that big, and we said what the crew was like 200.
Well, at this point, it's 400 something.
400. It's still a large ship, though.
Yeah,
I could imagine there's probably not a presence in there like all the time, since a lot of that stuff gets handled on the bridge. But it's not out of the ordinary for a system to be able to be controlled from more than one spot.
Yeah, isolated and kind of put into its own command structure or something.
Yeah, but then you could also use it from the bridge or whatever. There's probably a couple more rooms you could use it from if you need to.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I just think this is the only time they ever showed it, I think. I'd have to double check, but it sure seems like it off the top of my head.
You'd have to watch the entirety of TOS, because doubtful somebody has... well, that's probably not true. I'm sure that somebody has cataloged all that stuff.
Oh, I'm sure somebody has, yeah. As the Romulan ship moves back in for attack, Kirk gives the order to fire, but Stiles and Tomlinson have been overcome by the coolant fumes. Realizing the danger, Spock runs back in and manages to fire the phasers in time, severely damaging the Romulan ship. At the same time, it was reminding me really, really, really heavily of the Wrath of Khan. Visual contact between the ships is somehow established as Kirk watches a severely wounded Romulan commander stagger to his feet. The Romulan commander turns and looks at Kirk. He says with admiration, I regret that we meet in this way. In a different reality, I could have called you friend. And as the last part of his duty, he sets the Romulan ship to self-destruct. You know, Kirk had offered to beam them before. I mean, he really went out of his way to like give these guys a way out. Like, hey, we'll beam you in. We'll take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. And Romulan commander's like, no, we are creatures of duty. Here's what we do. And Kirk watches regretfully as that ship is destroyed.
Yeah, captain goes down with his ship, man.
That's it. Kirk goes to sickbay and discovers that not only did Spock fire the phasers, but that he also rescued Stiles. Unfortunately, Spock was not able to save Robert Tomlinson.
Oh, no.
Kirk is then forced to console the grief-stricken fiancée, Angela Martine, while she stands alone in the chapel. We both have to know there was a reason, Kirk says to her. She tearfully assures the captain that she'll be fine and leaves. And that is Balance of Terror.
Yeah.
So, Eric, this was your first episode of Star Trek. What did you think?
Well, I wanted to know just how many people on that set actually struck a chord with. And if they were able to process what the true meaning of this episode was even about at that time.
I imagine they were. I mean, it's not really subtle.
On the set, yes, but with all these people you hear saying stuff like, oh, Star Trek's too woke nowadays, and then you go back and you watch this episode from 56 years ago and go, guys.
Oh, yeah, it's just like when people say that Marvel is the same way, and I have this picture of a letter from the editor, from Stan Lee, just basically demolishing that argument from years and years and years ago.
Oh yeah.
So, it's so funny that some of these fandoms that are rooted in bringing up social issues and stuff like that people would still complain about it, even though from its inception, or at least very close to it, they've pretty much always been dealing with social issues one way or another.
Oh, yeah. I mean, quite heavily. I mean, to stick with your Marvel analysis, originally X-Men was about racism. I'd say in the 90s and early 2000s probably turned into gay rights more than anything else. But Star Trek, I hear people, I hope the new series isn't overly political. Compared to what? I mean, compared to Star Trek, the show that had a half black, half white, half black guy locked in eternal combat until they destroyed each other. What part of Star Trek did you not watch in the past? That's what I'm confused about.
I mean, in all fairness, this episode was just a few years after integration even started.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And, most people on this show, you'll find this more as we get into things, but Eric, there's an episode where Kirk is supposed to kiss Uhura, and the network doesn't want to do it because it'll piss off people in the South, right? Mm. And so what Shatner does is he does a scene where they kiss her, and then they were told to get multiple where he didn't, and he made sure to make a face or cross his eyes or do something stupid with his mouth in each and every one of those takes. So they would have to use the kiss, Everybody on the show knew what they were doing and had an idea. And you got to remember also, Star Trek wasn't the only show doing this. Twilight Zone was very progressive as well. There was a lot of racial equality and things being handled in it's easier to write about it when it's aliens than when it is when it's Northerners and Southerners, that kind of thing.
Well, I don't know about easier. It's just not for the writing part, but yeah, it makes it more palatable to people who are actually like that. Yeah.
But yeah, I would say probably out of the cast and crew, almost everybody. But I'd say out of the guys watching at home, I don't know. I would have thought everybody in the past until I heard all this. Man, Star Trek is just too woke today.
Yeah, and you got to know that they were having those same arguments back in the 60s, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. They had to have been. So, Eric, out of a scale of 5 plasma torpedoes, what would you give this episode?
I would definitely give this episode a 4, strong 4, maybe even a 4.2.
I would say that's pretty fair. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm on a similar scale there. Yeah, 4 plasma torches or whatever you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's not my favorite, but it's in the top 5 easy.
So I guess the thing is, if we're trying to slowly initiate this man into Star Trek, what does he watch next?
Well, it depends. If he is watching with an eye to be on this show more often, at least Discovery Season 2, but I would say 1 and 2, and then obviously Strange New Worlds, and then probably the Menagerie.
Yeah, I'd say that one would have to be in there as well.
That could even be like the next one he watches.
I was going to say that I would probably put that next just so it's not a giant system shock moving from here to Discovery.
Yeah.
All right. So Chris, next week we are going to be back and we are going to finally handle the Time Crystals episode of Discovery Season 2.
Yep.
So, we're just kind of thrown off by the holiday schedule there and actually wanted to get Eric in and checking this stuff out. Is there anything else we needed to hit before then?
Yeah. So we've been alluding for at least one episode about another project we're working on. When me and Jeremy first met, I was doing a Friday the 13th show. I was going through some life issues a couple years in, and I gave it away. And there's actually a new TV show on the horizon that does look like it's actually going to happen. So I thought it would kind of be cool to sort of get the band back together on that. And Eric was one of the original hosts on that show. And Jeremy, you guest spotted on there a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the three of us are going to delve back into Friday the 13th with probably a rotating fourth host or something like that. I don't know yet. But
yeah, and ever since we started this show, Strange New Trek, I know you wanted to get Eric involved in some manner. So we have gone ahead and tried to incorporate him. We'll try to incorporate him more going forward, even if it's these like, what would you call this? Resistance is futile kind of episodes.
Yeah. It actually, I don't think we need to do an episode per season once he gets into Discovery and Strange New Worlds, but I definitely would like to hear his thoughts on the menagerie. So I would definitely plan on that upcoming. I don't know about the next episode. We'll probably continue on with Discovery the next episode, but definitely an episode soon. Look for that, for Eric to give us his thoughts on the menagerie so we can prep him up for old Captain Pike.
Yep. And then let's see here. Actually, in February, Picard comes back. And I believe once Picard ends, Strange New World Season 2 should be starting.
Yeah, so hopefully we get finished with Discovery first.
I don't want it to seem like it's this big of a drag because it's really not. But, man, we have been having trouble with getting through the Discovery episodes.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's because, we had a new nice shiny thing and we missed that nice shiny thing, and this is not that thing, so.
Yeah, I think that is all that happened here. Well, everybody, please remember to rate and review and leave a thumbs up and a like, whether you catch us on your podcast app of choice or you catch us on YouTube. I do want to thank Miguel Esparza for his musical talents for the Strange New Trek theme song, and to Will Harding for running our YouTube page. So, yeah, everybody, thank you for joining us, and we will be back to you next week with our regularly scheduled programming, because I didn't write down the actual end of the show this week. So, live long and prosper and all that.
Thanks, guys, for having me on. I enjoyed this so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I figured it'd ease you back into it a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Eric, thank you for joining us. That was nice to have you along. It's also nice to get the viewpoint of somebody who's never actually seen Star Trek before. Yeah. Yep. Oh, and Commander Dog, she is saying goodbye to everybody as well. So with that, and to get her to stop biting on my shoe, it's probably time to get wrapped up.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll catch you next time.